sing now. We'll sing Heyo, 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 yo, hey, hey, yo, hey, hey, yo. We'll sing Heyo, 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 yo, hey, hey, yo, hey, hey, yo. We'll sing Heyo, 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 yo, hey, hey, yo, hey, yo. We'll just smile and wave and sing Heyo. Heyo, Niagara. This is Rob Repos coming to you live from the 4680Q studios in Niagara Falls. Guess what? It's Thursday morning, 10:30. I hope you all enjoyed a nice little blanket of white this morning, even as slushy as it is. But I got a really cool show lined up today. I've got my friend here, Mr. John Whitehead. John is a long-time type 1 diabetic, and I know he won't like when I say this, but I consider him to be an expert in the field. So we are going to talk everything diabetes, from monitoring to all kinds of reasons why things happen, what we can do about it, how we should be treating it, etc., etc. John is also most recently the award winner for the what is it, John?
June Callwood Volunteerism Award.
There it is. I'm sure it's on here somewhere. Also taking care of numerous. By the way, congratulations again. I think that's the third or fourth time I've congratulated you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's quite an honor. So tell us about that. Let's start off with that.
It's actually very surreal. First off, there was about 1,500 applications. There was 12 recipients. There was about 14 people there because a couple were groups of winners. And when you're with these other people and you see what they do in their volunteering, it's amazing, whether it be through a rape crisis center, through autism, through mental health areas, and through feeding the homeless and the people in need. There's so many doing so many things out there, and just amazing to be part of it.
Yeah. And I mean, you're involved with an awful lot of stuff.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I mean, how many? Okay, let's just talk Facebook groups as far as admin goes. How many of those have you got going?
6, I think. Are
6
directly. I'm directly part of.
Right. That's a lot. I do admin for 3 groups, and it's a lot.
Yeah, and that's the good thing is that all of us in the groups, it's all part of Type 1 together, and we really, we're all different schedules, so there's always really somebody there to monitor.
Yeah.
And if somebody ever does report something, it's
You're on
gone
it quick. You're on it quick. I know that for sure, because I watch 3 of the groups pretty closely, because you never know when a little piece of information is going to come up, that's going to help. So all right, let's for those who have not tuned in on, by the way, there's 2 other podcasts if you go on 4680Q that we've done together. You're my first 3-time returnee, so congratulations on that as well.
Oh. I think I'll be the first and everything.
I mean, I think it's so important. I mentioned in my media that 1 in 4 people suffer one form or another, whether it's prediabetes or type 2, type 1. Some of them are, there's things related to pregnancies. There's all kinds of different things. But 1 in 4 people. So if you're in a room with 100 people, 25 people there either have it or they're on the cusp of having it. And it's important that everybody really knows how to deal with it and how to address it. So let's start kind of zip through the basics of the different types and what exactly that means.
Okay, well, please. Type 1 is the one that is called Type 1 for a reason, because when it was first diagnosed, the people didn't last very long. Mm-hmm. Their urine was sweet, to the taste, as we talked about.
We did talk
in the
about
one
that.
episode.
Yeah. Some people are going, oh, why not?
Yeah.
That's how they used to test it.
Well, we're talking way back in the Roman days, like that's how they figured it, and then the people would pass away very shortly after. Starvation diet was the only way to last a little bit, and again, same problem. Like your body tends to produce some insulin for a while, and then it just stops and completely, and then you pass away. Then you've got the newer form of what's called LATA, or 1.5, which is a subcategory of type 1.
Okay, this is new to me.
Yeah. That's where it's usually older people that get it, and they're usually misdiagnosed as type 2 because their pancreas is slowly being attacked compared to type 1, where it is being attacked very quickly. So they can go sometimes for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years without having to go on insulin, but eventually their pancreas is completely shut, like the beta cells are completely shut down.
Right.
Then you have type 2, which is a genetic and lifestyle, and it's the lifestyle that people focus on. The genetics is huge. If you've got people in your family with type 2, chances are you are going to get type 2.
Right.
And it doesn't matter whether you are a vegan and do everything and exercise, and you are, let's say you're 5'5" and 110 pounds, you're still going to get type 2. Right. So that's why I really dislike when people always look at lifestyle only.
Right.
Because if it was lifestyle only, every single person that was heavy would be a type 2, and that's not the case.
Not the case. Exactly.
So yes, it is a component. Yes, for sure, we all should be doing things better, healthier. I'm an example. I should be eating my vegetables, and I don't. I eat my fruit, but not my vegetables.
Well, yeah, my wife is at home. She's nodding her head right now. Yeah, yeah.
So there's and then you've got gestational diabetes, which you talked about with pregnancy, and that's again because you have rapid weight gain, and your body is not able to utilize the insulin properly.
Right.
And a lot of the people now that get type 2, it's after they get after their pregnancies.
Wow.
Because their body isn't able to recover.
Right.
And we don't know why all these things are happening. But again, our food is not the same as it used to be 100 years ago and that either. So
no, it's not.
That's probably is a part of it, but I'm not a researcher on that. So
yes. And then there's where they're calling it type 3 now. Or that's I've heard that thrown around, and that is surgical.
Yeah.
So, I just recently passed my 2-year anniversary, or diaversary as well, where I had my pancreas removed. So I simply cannot produce insulin, period.
Right.
So, there's that as well. Very common misconceptions, like you say, you're type 2, well, you need to eat better. Well, no, not 100%.
Yeah.
It's yes, like you said, but not entirely.
Oh,
so
for sure. It doesn't, and again, it doesn't matter what the cause was. Let's worry now about what to do.
Yeah. And the reason that I bring you on the show, just so everyone knows, is simply because you've been doing it for almost 50 years.
Yeah, it's actually 49 right now.
It's 49 years.
49.
So almost 50.
Yep.
Right. So I know you're trying to hold on to that 49, right? But it's so important. I've talked to people all the time now, and I see people. The first thing we notice right now is we'll notice a sensor on the back of an arm or somewhere, and it immediately draws me in, and I want to talk to these people and see how they're doing and how they manage it and so on and so forth. And I think that people don't realize how many times or how many people are around them when you're out and about that are going through these issues, let's call it. Some deal with it better than others. I know there are some people that don't bother to monitor it, and we're going to talk about monitoring. But obviously that's extremely important, because if you're not monitoring your blood sugar, Because some people will say, well, I can feel it when I'm high or when I'm low, right? And so what do you have to say about that?
I was that person, and I generally, when I was younger, was good at it. Mm-hmm. But your body likes to play games with you all the time. And you don't know when that day will be when you don't realize you're high or you're low. And even if you realize that you're high and don't know how high, what's happening in your body? Excess sugar in your bloodstream. You have to sort of picture that excess sugar as little balls of sandpaper going through your cells.
Oh, yes.
And it's tearing away at especially the smaller blood vessels, the blood vessels in your eyes, your kidneys, your urinary tract infection, which is also going to cause performance issues in later years. So you may be a kid, I don't care. Well, you're going to care when you're 30 and you've got some problems in the bedroom, and women is the same.
Yeah.
It does the same thing to them. And there's all these issues that people seem to stay away from because that's about sex. We don't want to talk about that. Well, it's our normal body and lifestyle. That's part of who we are.
Yeah.
And it will affect you. And that was a big thing that helped me change with my wife. And she got me that's when I finally realized I need to smarten up and get things back on track.
And we're going to talk about what you did to do that. Now, because we're going to talk about monitoring. But let's talk about some of the common questions first. Because people always, when I say, yeah, I'm type 1 diabetic, and they're like, oh, so you got to watch what you eat. I say, well, not really. I mean, yeah, but I can eat whatever I want. And then that's a common misconception, right?
Oh, for sure. Because again, they're looking at it like the type 2s where they're told lifestyle. They have to watch everything that they eat. And I'm 5'5" and I'm 158 pounds. I got a little tiny bit of a belly, but not much. And I eat everything that I want. I had chocolate cake last night before going to bed.
Oh.
And my blood sugar did not spike at all.
That's amazing. But there's a reason for that.
Right.
Right?
Because I gave the insulin, and I gave it at least 15 minutes before I started to eat it.
Right.
So, and it was like everything worked out perfectly that time. Again, other times it may not, but you just correct.
That's the other thing is that, because I went on a couple of the groups just to get a couple of the common questions or issues that come up. And one of them is, well, I took the proper amount and waited the proper time, but that it can change. A and B, there's no prediction. You can't predict most of the time.
There's 40 factors that affect your blood sugar.
There you go.
And we can control the food and the insulin. Everything else is our body doing what it wants.
Yeah. There you go. So, common misconception number 1 erased. Yes, as a type 1 diabetic, we can eat whatever we want as long as we address it with insulin.
Correct. Yeah, we just have to do it, and we may have to do some corrections later, whether it be more insulin or even more food if we've taken too much.
Right. So, before we came on, I had a little bit of a high going, and so I took my fast acting, and so we've started to see a change. Yeah,
still getting up there though.
But it's still up there, and I took enough to bring me down to what I believe should be around 6. So 2 a 6.
Yeah,
because I'm not at a 6 right now. We'll leave it at that.
But I'm sitting at the perfect number that everybody strives for.
I know.
And again, this is just pure luck, but I am slightly dropping.
Okay, whatever.
Sitting at 5'5" here.
Yes. Well, before I left this morning, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to have to start looking into getting a pump, and I've been putting it off because I don't want to have something hanging off of me and all this stuff. But look, it's all about health, right? It's all about making sure that we keep the levels down. Like you say, if I had what are you using right now?
Right now I'm using the Tandem? T-Slim pump with the Dexcom G6.
G6, okay. So for those of you who are type 1 diabetics, you probably understand what he just said. For those of you who don't, who are not diabetics, what he's talking about is a system that automatically regulates how much insulin needs to be, well, we'll call it injected, but it's...
infused.
Infused, okay, based on a steady reading.
Correct, and it will shut off the insulin. Like right now, my basal rate insulin is reduced. You can see the little yellow mark on mine, which you can't see at home, but there's a little arrow in the top left-hand corner, and it shows yellow, meaning it's reduced. And in a very short time, if it lowers any more, it will show solid red, and that means my insulin is shut off completely.
Right. Perfect. Okay.
And so the pumps help, but they're still not automatic. Everybody assumes, oh, you got a pump, so you don't have to do anything. No, there's still a lot of work that goes in behind.
Right.
You still have to calculate your carbs and how much to give, and is your settings right? You need to change those.
There's calibrations and So, but definitely a good thing to have.
Oh, definitely a tool I wouldn't want to be without anymore.
Yeah. So, another common, this is really common right now too, is, I'm going to Hawaii in a couple months. What do I do? What do I take with me? How do I carry it? How do I, deal with the customs, so on and so forth. So
I just flew to Florida a few weeks ago.
Perfect.
And it's very easy, but it's a pain. You take every single thing that you're bringing with you, put it into one medical bag. That bag for most flights would be a free bag. Bring 3 times what you normally wouldn't need for that time period. So I went for 2 weeks, and I was wearing a Dexcom sensor, so that means I would only need to have 1 brought with me, like for that time period, but I brought 3.
Just in case.
Just in case a failure, one gets knocked off, falls off in the pool, whatever the case is. So you bring extra because you can't get supplies shipped to you in a different country. So everything in the one bag, get to the airport, let them know that this is a medical bag, nothing can be x-rayed.
Right.
Hand it to them so that it goes around the x-ray machine, and then I'm wearing a pump and a sensor. Same thing, I'm not going to go through the scanner, because even though a lot of people do go through, the pump company says do not go through, and I have that on my phone. Had somebody say, oh no, it's safe. Pump company disagrees with you, and I'm going to believe them over you.
Right.
So I go through the metal detector, put my hands up, they do the body pat down, they swab my hands after I touch my pump. 2 minutes later, away you go.
Okay.
So it takes maybe 5 minutes longer.
That's not a big deal.
It, yeah. And it was out of the Niagara Falls airport. If it was Pearson, I would have gone through the Nexus Pass, and I wouldn't have had to even take my shoes and stuff off, and it would have been an even easier process because I'm a trusted traveler.
Oh boy. And so, now the pods themselves is what carries the insulin?
That's with Omnipod.
That's Omnipod. Okay, so
Omnipod uses a pod and a PDM, which is like a cell phone, to tell the pod what to do. All the other pump companies like Ipsopump, Tandem, and Medtronic are a pump with a tube that runs to a site.
Okay, so you have to obviously carry extra insulin with you to Florida.
Yes.
And what do you carry that in?
I don't worry about it, because you can keep insulin from the manufacturers. They tell right on the inside for between 28 and 34 days, depending on which brand. And that's what they've completely tested.
Right.
There was a study done recently on the thermal stability of insulin, and it's a lot longer than what we trust.
They're doing it on the safe side.
They're doing it because they have to meet all these health regulations, and I just carry mine in my normal bag and keep it in a cool place, not sitting in the sunlight.
Yeah. Okay. Because we are actually going to Hawaii, so
Yeah, so but I'll send you that thermal stability thing, and people were taking it onto the beach at 30-degree weathers, and there was like a 90% effectiveness of it still.
oh, okay, all right, good. Now let's talk about. So I use Libra 2 right now until the Libra 3 comes out, or until I switch to a pump. So we're going to be researching, and I'm going to be picking your brain quite a bit on that, I'm sure, because you are the expert, even though you don't like when people say you're the expert.
I'm not a self-proclaimed, but I'm somebody that when it comes to diabetes facts, I delve, before I put anything into my body, I go online and I research what, why, how, what is this? What's it coded in? Is this going to do anything? Mm-hmm. Like there's so much, you're putting something like a sensor into your body. What's on that sensor?
Right.
Like why, like what exactly is it? It's basically a sensor is using the same materials as a blood glucose meter does. That's on that strip. And then there's other things to help protect it and keep it there without the body rejecting it. Like the Dexcom uses platinum in theirs. And people wonder why the prices are expensive of this technology.
It's platinum.
It's not cheap.
Yeah. And you know what? It's also life-saving technology, so let's not forget that.
Oh, it's, again, prior to CGM, my wife had to wake up and call the ambulance for me on a few occasions. Because I was convulsing in bed.
Oh my gosh.
And that's where diabetes is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard on the family, hard on like my wife and what that, I can't imagine what that was like
having
to
to call
watch.
an ambulance, yeah. And
then the failure in you when it's done. Even though at that time I was doing 10 blood checks a day, I can't do 10 blood checks when I'm asleep at night.
Exactly.
And that's where blood checks are not sufficient.
I'm going to stop you here for 1 second because I do want to mention that I do have a couple of sponsors for the show, and it's important for me to share the information. Peter Piper's Pub House in Font Hill, and as well as Font Hill Party Supply in Font Hill, both located at 111 Highway 20 East in Font Hill. I really appreciate their support, and it's important to know that they support, especially Peter Piper's. Well, they're connected, but Peter Piper's has supported live entertainment for a long period of time now, probably since they opened. And every Tuesday night they have trivia at 7:00. Every Thursday night they have open mic with Chris Saylor at 7:00. This Saturday, they've got live music starting at 8:00, and it's going to be Kindred, the band Kindred there. I know these folks, they're a dynamite band, so make sure you get in there, and make sure you stop in next door at Font Hill Party Supply for all your party needs. You can buy, you can rent, and they're right in the same plaza there on Highway 20, so appreciate their support, and as always, so... let's get to the monitoring now, because I know that there's a lot of, let's talk about Libra 2 for a minute, because, I follow the group, I follow the comments, and there's a lot, and since we switched now, since the 2 was upgraded to a continuous, there's been so many complaints, and all kinds of different complaints. From the 24-hour average isn't running at the top of the screen to, oh my gosh, I just went through 4 sensors in a row. We're not going to solve those issues. But I know that when I look back, so I'm just over the 2-year mark now, when I first got home from the hospital and I had to put on my first sensor myself, it failed. I put on a second one, it failed. I think the third one went okay. The fourth one failed. And by the time I got to the fifth one, so I'd had 2 sensors work out of 6. And that's when I really started digging into the Facebook group, to going on the Abbott website, to looking through the instructions in the box, for crying out loud, to make sure we were doing things exactly the way they should be done. Because we're talking about a very sensitive little piece of equipment. I don't want to call it equipment, but it's a sensor. It's called a sensor for a reason. It senses. And we realized, my wife and I realized, that there's a couple of things we weren't doing. One of them was we weren't putting it on a hard surface when we were popping them together, or popping the sensor into the applicator. And the other thing, there was something else that we were doing. Oh, when I was scanning, so when I would start the sensor, the message comes up, would you like to scan sensor? And you just hit yes, and then you scan. I was backing out of there for some reason. And after I did that a couple of times, it wouldn't accept it anymore. So, these are things that we addressed, because we were doing it together at that time, myself, and guess what? It's been 2 years now, and I've had one sensor that came off early, but it came off because I ripped it off. Another one did start, actually my last one started to pull away a little bit. I use a patch, and the patch, I hadn't put a patch on yet. And I went, so I put the patch on, and I managed to use it to the end of the 14 days.
Another thing you can do, if you notice the patch starting to peel up a little bit, waterproof eyelash glue.
Yeah.
You can just use that little brush and just get underneath it and push it down, and sticks it back down again.
There you go. But from your perspective, I mean, you see because you're admin on the group, but you see most of what goes on there, if it's not all of it.
Yeah.
What stands out to you that people might want to look at?
As soon as you have multiple failures, stop. Don't put, if you've got two that have not worked, don't put that third one on in a row. First off, you're frustrated. Mm-hmm. So you're not doing things probably in the proper order. You're just wanting to get it on and get this over with. And you're just sort of feeding the mistakes again, if there's any being made. Reach out to somebody, whether it be your clinic and the diabetic educator, somebody that can show you how to apply. A local rep. If you contact any of the companies, whether it be Abbott, Dexcom, Medtronic, you just contact them and say, listen, I'm having problems with my sensors. Mm-hmm. Can somebody help me out? Dexcom has people you can do called Dexcom Care, and they will act their CDEs, and they will do Zoom meetings with you, and they can actually watch what you're doing. And they can say, oh, hold on one second there. Before you do that, do this.
Right.
Or, okay, everything is looking good. Because occasionally there will be a person, for some unknown reason, a sensor doesn't work for them. They've tried Abbott and it doesn't work. So they move to Dexcom. Mm-hmm. Vice versa. We don't know what it is in the human body that may be reacting, because the sensors are different. They're doing basically the same job, but the codings are different. Mm-hmm. The algorithms are different in them, that are trying to predict what your glucose level is in your interstitial fluid, which is what they're reading, and they're trying to predict what your blood glucose is. So it's a very complicated thing that people need to realize. Yeah. And when you do a blood check compared to a reading on your CGM, you can't expect it to be perfect. You want it to be within 20%, and then that is considered correct. Right. Especially if it's not a stable, straight, horizontal line. If it's moving up or down, you have to expect it to be different.
Of course. And that's one of the things we talked about before we came on air. What was that one of the things that people need to make sure they're checking is that, I just had a half a glass of Coca-Cola. Well, let me check my sugar. Oh, well, that doesn't make sense. And then I test it with a blood strip and it's way off. Well, of course, you're affecting the readings by your own actions. So you have to be careful when you're doing that.
People don't realize that when you do take in sugar, it goes into your body and then into your blood first. Then from the blood, then it reaches into the interstitial fluid. That's why there's a delay that they talk about. Mm-hmm. And the average delay now is less than 9 minutes. So that's why if it's rising or falling, there's going to be a difference for sure. But if it's stable, generally, if it's stable, what you were at 9 minutes ago is what you're going to be at now.
Right. I use 7 minutes because I think it was 5. It was 5 to 10.
Yeah.
They said so. I use 7 minutes, and I'm literally, if I'm off by 0.5, that's totally within exception to me. Anyways, I see people put online that they turn their alarms off, and I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. The whole point of it is, one of the points of it is so you have an alarm to let you know ahead of time. And recently somebody had posted that, they set their alarm for 3.9 and it didn't go off. And I'm thinking, 3.9? I set my alarm at 5, my low alarm. I set it at 5. So if it wakes me up in the middle of the night and I'm 4.9 and I'm trending down, I have time to address the situation.
So you've done exactly what you're supposed to do. You set your alarms for when you need to take action.
Exactly.
Not when it becomes a critical state of taking action.
Exactly.
And luckily with my pump, I have a second set of alarms, but I don't use the alarms. I use vibrate. So I set them even higher. So my pump is set for 5 for a low. Mm-hmm. So I feel that vibration, especially if I'm at work, and I know, okay, and then my alarm on my Dexcom doesn't go off until I'm 4.2.
Okay.
And it's funny when I'm at work and the alarm goes off, customers and that really don't even pay attention to it because it's going off in my pocket and there's a police siren going off and they don't even seem to notice. A couple of people have, and they're like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
Oh, it's just my sugar going down. And they're like, "Oh, that's cool. That's great."
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like,
well, it's funny because because a lot of times now when I'm out with friends or whatever, they're asking me, "So how's your sugar right now?" They're asking me to check it, and then if the alarm goes off, they're like, "Oh, hey, your alarm's going off." They let me know, right? I mean, I know, but it's I think, again, one of the reasons why we need to talk about these things is the fact that people need to be aware, okay? This is not an uncommon thing. There are a lot of people out there that are suffering. Some are suffering. Dealing with diabetes in one way, shape, or form or another. And I have a friend who I will go nameless right now, but he's on the cusp. He was like, just within. They call pre-diabetic, within a point, and so addressing it at this stage, trying to deal with it with
food and exercise.
Food and exercise. Sorry, diet. Yeah. God, I couldn't think of the word diet. Anyways, so it's so common out there. I just think people need to be aware of it.
And when people hear alarms going off, if you're in a movie theater and an alarm goes off, trust me, I want that alarm off as soon as possible. But the actual urgent lows, those alarms can't be shut off. So that's why you may hear it, and people with diabetes tend to shut it off pretty quickly afterwards. Mm-hmm. But we're not, those alerts and alarms that are going off, trust me, we don't want to be disturbing anybody, and we're not trying, but you're going to get that. And as more and more people are dealing with this, you're going to hear those more and more, whether it be at the workplace, when you're out, when you're shopping at a restaurant.
Yeah.
We had a person at our work a customer came in, got a pump. It was just their second day with the pump, and she was going extremely low, and the mother didn't know how to shut the alarm off. And so I made sure I went over, and they were trying to get her to eat faster, and I went out and got pineapple juice for her, because at our workplace, our pineapple juice is the highest sugar.
Yeah.
And when she drank that, within 5 minutes, the alarm shut off.
Right.
But it's like, so people are at all different stages. Like, even when you're trying, like, this girl just got a pump, and it's her first 24 hours on a pump.
Yeah.
Things are going to go wrong. It has to be expected.
Sure.
So, but they're doing their best, and we just have to try to support support them and everybody in general.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the pump and what you use and how what people would need to know, for example, if they're looking into moving to a pump, such as myself.
You need to look at your lifestyle first. If you are a construction worker, are you going to be able to place that pump in a location that's not going to be affected? Mm-hmm. Do you need to access the pump to do anything? Right now, the tandem pump, I have to access it to hit the buttons, to give myself insulin, to shut off an urgent low on it, all these things. In the next year, hopefully, we'll have a phone app that will be able to do that. So, again, these are things that make things easier and it makes it more choice. Mm-hmm. Kids generally go to Omnipod because there's no tubing. They can't get it caught. They can't get it knocked off because it is a little bit bigger on the body. Mm-hmm. That was what I really didn't like about the Omnipod. For me, was the size of it. I didn't like the fact that it was a little bit bigger. And that PDM, to me, again, some people, it's a great thing. But that PDM, if I forgot that, I couldn't eat. If I forget my phone, if I forget, like where my Dexcom mainly is, if I forget that, it's no big deal. I've got my pump. I can still give myself my insulin using the control panel. So that's why each pump has different features for you. And then you have to look at reservoir size or the cartridge. How much insulin does it hold? Mm-hmm. You're supposed to change the pump site every 3 days, depending on what infusion site you use. Some are plastic, some are metal. Metal ones you're supposed to replace sooner.
Okay.
So depending on which one works for you. And again, that's where Omnipod is a little bit different. It has one only. All the other pump companies, Medtronic, Tandem, and Ipsopump, you have different infusion sets that you can choose from, whether they be a little bit deeper, a little bit shallower, angled, non-angled. So there's different ones. So if one doesn't work for you, you try a different one until you find one that does work. Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget, there's also we'll call it the old-fashioned method of finger poking. So that's something that, I've got
that will never, ever be replaced.
It won't. And I think there are people who seem to forget about it. So I see some of the messages that come through, and I wonder, well, if you're not sure, then I always go to let's poke the finger.
Yeah.
And even that's not 100%. 100% of the time, you've got to make sure that your reader is reading properly.
Yeah.
I don't know how often. How often should that be replaced?
Your meter generally every couple of years, but if it's performing accurately, and the way to do that is every single time you go for your A1C test, they always do the blood sugar at the same time. Mm-hmm. So you take your meter in with you, and as soon as the girl finishes drawing your blood, they can either give you a sample of your blood to chest, or you just do it yourself on your finger or your. Yeah. And like myself, I don't use my fingers to check my blood. No? I use my palm and my forearm.
Your forearm.
Yep. Yeah, just it's amazing. Like there's a slight delay on the forearm compared to your fingertips, but again, if you checked all 10 of your fingers, you'll get different results.
They're going to be different results,
and
for
that's what people never understand is that. You may get 3 fingers that'll match up and then a couple of them won't. And you're like, why is that?
What the heck's going on?
Yeah. And it's just, that's the way our body is. It's not the exact same everywhere at the same time.
Yeah. Wow.
And when we're talking about this now, I want to make sure I get something out quickly.
Yep.
These watches that you see online. Oh my gosh.
I looked into it. I did.
Yep.
Yeah. And I went, no.
And I told people for a month prior that Health Canada had an active investigation going for these watches. And now Health Canada has put out a warning.
Yeah.
Do not buy these watches you see on Facebook saying they can tell your blood glucose. One of the gentlemen online that does a lot of medical reviews, he did one, and the first time he did it, he was impressed. The first checks he did,
Yeah.
because the numbers were very close. And when you're looking at a watch which is under $100,
Yeah.
and you're like, wow, this can replace all my blood checks. Well, as soon as he let himself go low, numbers didn't change.
Oh.
Then he had to so then he gave himself sugar to go up to
Yeah.
recover. Levels barely moved at all. It didn't pick up the lows, didn't pick up the
Holy
highs.
smokes.
It made everything look like you were running great.
Wow.
And even Apple recently released that they are working on this technology, but at this time, they are not working on it for people with diabetes. They're working on it mainly for the pre-diabetes market. So that way if it notices that your levels are going up after eating and things like that, that these are things that you may want to discuss with your doctor.
Right.
But it's not to be used for actual monitoring or giving of insulin.
Right. And, maybe sometime way in the future that might happen, but right now, absolutely zero. Do not do that.
Do not trust them. Do not buy them. I'm actually, every time I see one, I report it. On Facebook, I report it every single time. On Google, I report it every time.
Yeah.
So,
Good. Which leads me to my next issue, and that is people asking for advice in the Facebook groups. I see it all the time, and I think that people obviously need to be careful where they get their advice from. If you're going to by the way, I guess I didn't put out the disclaimer. We are not giving medical advice here. We are making suggestions and, sharing experiences and knowledge, but we would never give medical advice, and you should never take medical advice from a Facebook group either.
yes. What I recommend is like when you ask for something in a group, see if it rings a bell. You may have, there's so much information that when you're dealing with diabetes, so you forget things. But when somebody says, oh, I do this, and then you're like, oh, that sort of sounds, I think I remember my CDE or my endo talking about that.
Right.
And so that makes sense. The other thing to do is look at the people in the group when they give advice, and if you see 3 people and you like their advice always rings true to you, and then you ask a question, look at those 3 people. If they comment on your question, go with them. But again, it's always user beware, because you're the one either injecting insulin, doing, whether it be pre-bolusing or bolusing with your meal or after your meal, or how much to do. But nobody should ever be saying you should be giving yourself 3 units.
Oh gosh, no.
Because unless you've given them how much insulin you normally take in a day, your insulin sensitivity, what your correction factor is, this is a whole math equation that we have to figure out on a daily basis.
Exactly. And like I say, you see it all the time, and sometimes I sit back and I go, I want to say don't, but you have to use what I call common sense. Okay, it's just like everything on the internet. You have to use a little bit of common sense, and really you should be going. If you have serious medical questions, you should be talking to your endo or your team, because they're the ones who are going to provide you with the answers.
Yes, they definitely are. The CDEs are definitely, I would feel, even better than the endo.
Yeah.
The endos look at the numbers and the really fine things, while the CDEs are giving you more real life experience advice on what to do in different situations.
Right. And what are CDEs for those?
Certified diabetic educators, or your nurses that you see when you go see an endocrinologist or your diabetes education center.
Every 6 months I go. So
yeah.
Unless I need, I can call them anytime, but I go in for an actual appointment every 6 months. So
yeah, and they are a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
I still remember when I had an issue with my pump going on and how long my duration was on it. I lowered my duration number, and she was like, do me a favor, just try this, increase it. And so then I really paid attention, and there was an effect on my insulin after, it's usually say about 4 hours for most people. I was lowering it to just around 3 because I didn't feel that it was really doing much. But then when I went to over 4, I noticed it. And even the tandem pump, its duration on insulin is 5 hours. And the more I paid attention to that at the beginning, the more I realized there still is an impact if you don't eat anything or give yourself more insulin during that time.
Okay,
So-
and that brings me to a very good point, okay? Because people ask for advice and they'll show a snapshot, and their line is like up and down like this, but there's no information. Look, I'm using Libre 2, okay? When I give myself 6 units of FIASP, I log it. I put that information in there. So I can look back and go, oh yeah, okay, I was up here and I took the 6 units and then this happened. Okay? I don't log in all of my carb information at this time. I will as I, get...
You won't have to when you get a pump. It'll automatically do it when you put your carbs in. Yeah.
Okay. You're going to keep driving that home, huh? But it would help. What I'm trying to get at is it would help, if you're going to go on one of the groups and ask for advice, to be able to look at the snapshot and say, okay, you ate here, or you took so many units at this time. You know what I mean? So the information there, the tool is there, so we should be using it, and that would help.
There's so many tools on these devices that people don't realize. Your AGP graph, average glucose profile, is the number one tool.
You talk about it all the time. I know.
That the CDEs use.
Yeah.
And I can look at a graph and go, you eat at 8 o'clock, you eat at 1 o'clock, and you eat at 7 o'clock.
I've seen you do it, actually. Yeah. I've seen you do it. Yeah.
And it's like, but people, somebody said, what do you see here? And that's what I put, but they didn't ask, is there anything more I should be doing? And that person actually, there was virtually nothing they could really do other than pre-bolus a little bit longer, because the highs after the eating were a little bit like they could have, if they bolus earlier, they would have been able to correct those.
Right.
Which you can do for your lunch and your supper a lot of the time, but your breakfast, some people don't. They get up, they shower, they give their insulin, they eat, and they go.
And you go, yeah.
So you can't pre-bolus enough.
Right. So, and in that case, you're going to have to expect a bit of a spike.
Right.
And if you've taken the right amount, it will correct eventually. For those who don't know, we're talking about bolus. That is the fast-acting insulin we give for counteracting what we're going to eat, basically.
Right.
Okay. As far as the carbs and sugar and etc. Okay. Excellent. So, is there anything that you want to share with the audience as far as something that we haven't covered yet?
The only thing I can really share that I really hope anybody listening who may be having a hard time with stuff, dealing with type 1 is easier than not dealing with type 1.
Excellent point.
If you pay attention and put a little bit of effort into it, it is so much easier for your life and your longer life than if you were to sort of put it on the back burner or ignore it. And try to change some of the words. Like for me, it was testing my blood. I changed it to checking my blood. And that word, for whatever the reason was, because I hated always failing when I had a 12, a 13. So I was like, so then I didn't check because I didn't want to see those numbers. You don't want to see the results, yeah. But now I saw the number, and it's like, okay, I need so much insulin now.
Yeah.
And it just became.
And I think that's a great point. I bet you there's people out there for sure who are the same, where they think, I don't want to check it because I know it's not going to be good.
Right.
But
that's when you need to do it.
That's when you need to check it, and that's when you need to address it. So
yeah. So like I said, that little bit of effort it's not that much. Even let's say you put half hour a day into your diabetes. That's not that long of a 24-hour day. You put that half hour into it, the rest of your day is so much easier.
Yeah, true. We will. Are there any educational events coming up? I know they have them once or twice.
They just had one recently, so I'm not sure when the next one's going to be right now. I didn't.
Yeah.
Didn't
Where can we find that information?
Usually, if you contact any of the endocrinologists in Niagara, they will have it.
Yeah.
The Niagara Diabetes Education Center will have it, and the Omnipod reps are the ones that generally are the ones that organize it.
Okay. And I will, by the way, I will post some of the groups in when I do get this on air. You can, by the way, if you're listening, you can go back and there's on the 4680q.com website, you go into podcasts and you can see all the podcasts up into episode 31 that I have online, as well as all the other podcast creators. There's a lot of great information out there, but we've got 2 other episodes that I've done with John Whitehead. And, I think the first one we started with the basic of basics, and then we moved into monitoring on the second one. And today we kind of really covered a whole bunch of other great stuff. So is there, by the way, I didn't forget. I've been thinking about it now for a little bit, but I didn't want to stop. But I want to say hi to my mom and dad and my wife, Marina, because they're always on listening. So good morning, you guys. I love you guys so much. And I appreciate your support. And to anybody else who's listening, I didn't, looks like I didn't get any questions. That's okay. If you do have questions, you can certainly send them off to me. And, we can point you in the right direction. And, once again, is there anything else that you want to make sure that everybody knows?
Life is still good with diabetes. It really is.
That's a good point. It's an excellent point. You don't have to, and we're seeing it more and more now in sports and stuff. You're seeing
football
athletes
players,
come out.
tennis players, hockey. Like they're all there's so many now that are out there. We can do it all.
Yeah.
The only thing we can't do right now is join the military. You can fly commercial airlines now.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that we really can't do. Military,
awesome.
You can understand that because everybody has to be able to fight. It's kind of hard to fight if your insulin's back 20 kilometers and you can't get to it.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Well, listen, thank you again, John. I appreciate it. Don't forget, folks, this Sunday night, Taps Brew House, there is a brew and browse. It's for the Christmas brew and browse that they have annually. We're going to have a vendor's table there. There's going to be other vendors there. Come on in and look for your, most favorite Christmas gift to give to your most favorite person. I'm going to be running the live music. We've got some great artists who are going to be performing, including myself, Starla Silvestri, Pat and Mike, Andy Griffiths, and Dealer's Choice Duo. The show starts at 4 o'clock and runs till 9 p.m. It's going to be a packed house, so make sure you get there and get in. We got all kinds. My wife's been working so hard at making all kinds of sports gnomes and Christmas gnomes and elves and her rock art and paintings, and there's going to be a lot of different stuff there. So if you're looking for a little something, come out and support local local businesses and local people who are doing great things out there. Thank you again, John. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And don't forget, get out to Peter Piper's Saturday night for their Kindred is playing. So I think we've covered everything we need to do. I appreciate it. You guys have a great day. I'll be back next week with one Mr. Mark Swayze at 10:30. Heyo, Niagara. Rob Repos. Take care, everybody, and have a great weekend.